Well, let's hear from the Conservative MP, Michael Fabricant. But before we do, a bit of background. Michael Fabricant doesn't have any outside earnings, but if you can remember the origins of this row, he did vote for the original amendment overturning the suspension of Owen Paterson, and that would have created a new committee to overhaul the disciplinary process for MPs. That move was scuppered because opposition parties refused to cooperate. Owen Paterson has subsequently resigned as an MP and skipped forward to today, and the Prime Minister has now come out in support of plans to stop MPs from working as paid consultants, as we've just heard. Right, let's hear from Michael Fabricant. Good evening.
Good evening.
So you've tweeted in support of the Prime Minister tonight, despite supporting that original amendment. Why?
Well, the original amendment was nothing to do with changing rules. It was all about actually how the process of judging whether Owen Paterson was guilty or not was done. I mean, we don't want to go into that. It's old history.
No, but it was going to create a new committee and there was going to be an option to look at the rules.
Yeah, but for the procedure of how you did these investigations, this is something completely different. This is changing the rules about what MPs can and cannot do if these are passed later this year or early next year.
Ed Davey gave up his job tonight. Is that what you think other MPs should do now that the Prime Minister's come out in support of this rule change?
I think it depends on what jobs they have. I mean, Keir Starmer, I suspect, would never have become an MP if he thought he couldn't earn extra money, and there's nothing wrong with that from doing legal work that he did when he was a backbencher.
Although he has clarified that these new rules that Labour were proposing would apply to that kind of work. He wouldn't be able to do that.
Well, you know, is it in the nation's best interest that somebody like Keir Starmer or others couldn't get in? I think what the key thing is not that you shouldn't do other work, but you shouldn't be a lobbyist. You shouldn't be advising companies on how Parliament works because you're just using the fact that you're an MP for that purpose. But if, on the other hand, you are a lawyer or a doctor or have other skills which have got nothing to do with Parliament, I think there's no harm in actually doing that work, provided, and this is the big thing, providing it is a second job. In other words, it can't take up your whole time, because if that were the case, being an MP would be your second job, and that's completely wrong.
So this phrase, reasonable limits, which isn't defined, presumably that means for Sir Geoffrey Cox, he's got to cut back his legal work considerably.
Well, I would argue it's not a question of how much you earn. I mean, I think...
No, we're talking about time. We're talking about time.
I agree with you. So I don't know exactly how many hours he's put in, but if it's more than 50%, and, some people say it was, some people say it wasn't, then that has to be wrong, doesn't it?
This is, though, an unholy mess. It's taken a few weeks to get to the point where the Prime Minister has agreed that there should be some kind of change. Do you regret, first of all, supporting Owen Paterson in the way that you did, and the damage that the weeks that have followed have perhaps done to the Conservative Party, the reputation of the Conservative Party?
I think what I regret, and as I said earlier on, what I voted for had nothing to do with defending Owen Paterson, but it was all about the procedures. So it was rather a technical thing we were voting for. What I regret, though, is that the government put a whip on this. It was House business, and I was a whip myself for 7 years. And one thing I know, and that is when the government interferes with House business and starts whipping backbenchers as to how they should vote on House business, no good ever comes of it. And in this instance, no good did come out of it.
The damage to the Conservative Party, significant?
We'll see. The days when Tory sleaze, which of course Labour keep on repeating over and over again at the moment, that impacted in a very different time when there wasn't 24-hour media. Let's see what it's like in 6 months' time.
Michael Fabricant, thank you very much.